Part 1. The first time I collapsed, everyone said it was my age. I was standing in my kitchen, making tea, the same way. I had every morning for 40 years, when the cup slipped from my hand. The porcelain shattered on the floor, and the room tilted sideways. My knees gave out. I remember the cold tiles against my cheek, and my daughter-in-law Emily's voice upstairs. Not worried, not panicked, just calm. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctor smiled gently. "Low blood pressure," he said. "You need rest, Mr. Howard. Nothing serious." Nothing serious. But it happened again 3 days later, and again the next week. Each time, I grew weaker. I stopped going for my morning walks. I couldn't finish a meal. My hands trembled when I tried to button my shirt. My son Daniel said it was normal. "Dad, you're 72, he told me. "You just need to accept slowing down." Emily agreed a little too quickly. "Maybe it's time," she said softly, placing a warm hand on my shoulder. "This house is a lot for you to manage alone." A lot for me. I had built that house myself. Every board, every wall, every window frame. I remembered installing them with my late wife, Margaret. But I didn't argue, because that same evening, Emily gave me a gift, a small velvet box. "I wanted to do something nice for you," she smiled. "You've always treated me like a daughter." Inside was a silver pendant, simple, elegant, with a tiny dark stone in the center. "It's for protection," she said. "I read older people feel calmer wearing certain minerals." Daniel nodded. "Wear it, Dad." Emily picked it specially. I did. And that was when my health truly started collapsing. Within 2 weeks, I could barely stand. Within a month, I couldn't climb the stairs. The strange part? Every time I removed the necklace to shower, I felt better, clearer, stronger. Then one afternoon, my neighbor Walter came to check on me. He had been a pharmacist for 30 years. When he helped me sit up, his eyes fixed on the pendant resting on my chest. His expression changed instantly. "Arthur," he whispered, "take that off. Right now." I laughed weakly. "It's just jewelry." He didn't laugh. He leaned closer, his hand shaking slightly as he examined the stone. And then he said words that froze the blood in my veins. "That's not a healing mineral. Someone is poisoning you." If this opening shocked you, you haven't heard the worst part yet, because I trusted the person who gave it to me. Subscribe now. In Part 2 you'll discover what Walter found inside the pendant, and why my daughter-in-law wanted me weak. Part 2. Walter didn't wait for my permission. He unclasped the necklace from my neck so quickly the chain scraped my skin. For the first time in weeks, I felt air on my chest, and oddly, relief. My breathing eased almost immediately. Walter stared at the pendant under the kitchen light. He didn't sit down. He didn't speak for several seconds. Then he said quietly, "Arthur, when did she give this to you?" "About a month ago," I answered. "Why?" He didn't reply. Instead, he pulled a small magnifying lens from his jacket pocket, something he always carried from his pharmacy days, and examined the tiny dark stone embedded in the silver. His face went pale. "That stone isn't decorative." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He turned the pendant over and pressed gently near the back seam. At first nothing happened. Then I heard a faint click. The stone shifted. Walter carefully twisted it, and the front opened like a miniature compartment. Inside was a fine powder packed behind a thin perforated plate. I felt my throat close. "What is that?" Walter's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Slow-release toxin." I stared at him, unable to process the words. He explained carefully. "When this sits against your skin, body heat activates it. The chemical passes through your pores. Small doses, not enough to kill quickly, but enough to weaken you. Dizziness, fainting, muscle fatigue, confusion." Exactly what had been happening to me. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "Are you saying someone is trying to make me sick?" Walter looked straight into my eyes. "No, not sick." He paused. "They want you declared medically unfit." My heart started pounding. Images flooded my mind. Emily suggesting I move out. Emily talking about how hard the house was to maintain. Emily discussing assisted living facilities. Daniel agreeing. I suddenly remembered something. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel had brought paperwork. "Just precautionary, Dad," he said. "In case anything happens. Medical power of attorney. It helps us take care of you." I had refused to sign. Emily had looked disappointed. Now my hands trembled. They were trying to make doctors believe I have dementia. I whispered. Walter nodded slowly. "If you collapse enough times, doctors eventually recommend guardianship. Once that happens, someone else controls your property, finances, and house." My house. My savings. Everything Margaret and I built together. And then I understood. If I were declared incapable, they wouldn't need my signature. They would legally own it. I sank into a chair. My own son. I said quietly. Walter hesitated. Maybe Daniel doesn't know. But deep down, I wasn't sure. Just then I heard the front door. Keys. Emily's voice. "I'm home. Did Arthur take his medication?" Walter quickly closed the pendant and slipped it into his pocket. He looked at me and whispered urgently, "Act normal. Don't let her know we know." My hands clenched under the table as Emily walked into the kitchen smiling, carrying soup, and I suddenly realized something terrifying. She thought I was dying, and she was waiting for it. In part 3, I pretend to grow weaker, but secretly begin investigating. And what I overhear one night behind a closed door changes everything. Part 3. I did exactly what Walter told me. I became weaker. At least, I pretended to. The next morning, when Emily asked how I slept, I rubbed my forehead and spoke slowly. "Not very well. I feel confused today." Her eyes lit up for a split second. She tried to hide it, but I saw it. That wasn't concern. That was progress. Daniel came over that afternoon. He stood near the doorway watching me carefully, almost studying me. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. I purposely took longer than normal to answer. "Yes, I think so. I just feel tired all the time." He looked at Emily. A silent conversation passed between them. Then Emily spoke softly, almost rehearsed. "Arthur, maybe it's time we think about assisted living. Just temporarily. Somewhere with nurses. Just until you get stronger." I lowered my head like the idea confused me. "Don't want to leave Margaret's house." Daniel sighed. "It's not forever. We just want what's safe for you." Safe. The word almost made me laugh, but I kept acting. That night I didn't go to bed. Instead, I sat quietly in the living room with the lights off. Around midnight I heard footsteps upstairs, not in my room. In their room. Daniel and Emily were staying the night more often lately. I slowly walked toward the hallway and stopped near the staircase. Their bedroom door was slightly open. And then I heard Emily's voice. "You saw him today. He's getting worse. The doctor will definitely support guardianship after one more episode." My chest tightened. Daniel sounded uneasy. "Are you sure this is necessary?" "Necessary?" Emily's tone hardened. "Daniel, once the paperwork goes through, we'll have legal control. The house alone is worth over $1 million, and your father can't manage it anymore." Silence. Then Daniel asked something that froze my blood. "The necklace. It's safe, right? It won't actually kill him." My hands trembled. Emily answered calmly. "It's a microdose. It weakens the nervous system, nothing more. He'll just look like an old man declining quickly." I had to grab the wall to stay standing. My son knew. He knew. Daniel spoke again, quieter this time. "I just didn't think it would be like this." Emily sighed. "Do you want the inheritance or not? Because if he lives another 10 years, we get nothing. The medical declaration is the only legal way." My heart broke in complete silence. Not anger, not shock, just a deep, hollow pain. I went back downstairs before they could see me. I sat in Margaret's chair until sunrise. For the first time since she died, I spoke to her picture. I protected this family my whole life, and now I have to protect myself from it. The next morning, I greeted Emily with a gentle smile. "I've been thinking," I said weakly. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't live alone anymore." Her relief was instant. And that's when I knew. They had no idea I had already started planning, because I wasn't going to fight them emotionally. I was going to trap them legally. In part 4, I contact an old friend, a lawyer, and together we set a plan that will turn their scheme against them. But it requires me to disappear first. Part 4. I waited until Daniel and Emily left for groceries. The moment their car turned the corner, I walked straight to the garage, shut the door, and opened an old metal toolbox buried behind paint cans. Inside was a phone, not my usual one, a number only 2 people in the world had. I dialed it. It rang once. "Arthur." The voice answered immediately. "Walter, I need a lawyer. A real one. Not just advice anymore." There was silence for a moment. Then he spoke carefully. "Did you confirm it?" "Yes," I said quietly. "They're poisoning me. Slowly. And they want legal guardianship." His tone changed instantly. "Don't hang up. I'm calling someone." 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Arthur Bennett. A calm female voice said, "Yes." "My name is Laura Hensley. I specialize in elder financial abuse and coercion cases. Walter explained your situation. I need you to listen very carefully and do exactly what I say." I sat down. "Okay." "The poison alone is serious," she said, "but legally we need intent. Proof that they plan to declare you mentally incompetent for financial gain." "I heard them," I said. "Last night. Everything." "Good," she replied. "Now we make them prove it themselves." I didn't understand. How? Her answer shocked me. You're going to let them win. I almost dropped the phone. What? You will act weaker. Agree to assisted living. Allow them to begin guardianship paperwork. And when they file it, we'll already have evidence recorded. I swallowed hard. You mean a trap? Yes, but it requires patience and one more thing. What? You cannot stay in that house much longer. Once they push the medical evaluation, they'll isolate you completely. So before that happens, you must legally transfer control of every asset you own into a protective trust. I stared at Margaret's photo. Everything. Everything, she confirmed. House, accounts, property. By the time they think they're taking it, there will be nothing for them to take. For the first time since this began, I felt calm. They won't know. They'll think they've already won, she said softly. We spent 3 hours preparing documents electronically. Walter arrived that same afternoon with a notary. My hand shook as I signed the final paper. The house, Margaret's house, protected. But Laura wasn't. Part 5. The facility they chose was 30 minutes away. I pretended not to notice how quickly Emily signed the admission papers, or how Daniel barely spoke during the drive. They left after only 10 minutes. No hug. No call me if you need anything. Just relief. I watched their car disappear through the window of the lobby. Then I stood up. The nurse behind the desk looked confused. Mr. Bennett, your room is upstairs. I won't be needing it, I said quietly. She blinked. At that exact moment, the front doors opened and Laura Hensley walked inside, holding a folder. Good, she said. They didn't stay long. We walked out together. I was never admitted. Instead, Laura drove me to a small furnished apartment. Across town, a temporary legal residence. She had already arranged under confidentiality. My phone number was changed. My bank accounts were secured under the trust. My mail was redirected to Daniel and Emily. I had simply vanished inside a care facility. And that's exactly what we wanted, because now they would make their move. 3 days later, Laura called me into her office. They filed, she said. My stomach tightened. Guardianship petition. They're claiming you're mentally unfit and unable to manage your property. They even attached a physician's recommendation, probably arranged, after your fainting episodes. I clenched my fists. So they're actually doing it. Yes, she said calmly. And now we let them keep going. Why? Because fraud is stronger when they commit it fully, she replied. The more they push, the more the court will see intent. She turned her computer screen toward me. An email transcript. Emily had contacted a real estate agent, already discussing selling my house. The listing draft was attached. My house. Not even legally theirs yet. And they were preparing to profit from it. My chest burned, but Laura raised a hand. Wait. There's more. She played an audio file. My breath stopped. It was Daniel's voice. Recorded. Walter had installed a small recorder in the dining room before. I left, with legal approval, since I was the homeowner. Daniel, once the court signs, we can sell quickly. Dad won't understand anyway. Emily, He won't even come back. By the time he realizes, everything will be transferred. I sat frozen. That wasn't manipulation. That was conspiracy. Laura paused the recording. "This," she said, "is elder exploitation, fraud, and attempted unlawful property seizure. The judge will not be pleased." I looked at her slowly. "So what happens now?" She smiled slightly. "We wait for the hearing. They'll walk into court expecting control over your life." She slid a court notice across the desk. "And instead, they'll meet you." My heart pounded. For the first time since they thought they'd gotten rid of me, they'll see I'm not weak. I stood up. "Good," I said quietly, because now it wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about betrayal. And in 7 days, my son and his wife were going to face me in front of a judge. In Part 6, the courtroom hearing begins, and when I walk through the doors alive and healthy, Emily's reaction reveals more than she intended. Part 6. The courtroom was quieter than I expected. No shouting, no drama, just paperwork, whispers, and the soft sound of chairs moving across the floor. But for me, it felt heavier than any battlefield I had ever imagined. I stood outside the doors with Laura. "Are you ready?" she asked. I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking anymore. For the first time in months, I said, "Yes." Inside, Daniel and Emily were already seated beside their attorney. I could see them through the small glass window in the door. Emily looked confident. Daniel looked nervous. A clerk opened the courtroom doors. All parties for the Bennett guardianship hearing. We walked in, and the moment Daniel saw me, he stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Dad!" Emily turned. Her face drained of color instantly. She didn't look shocked I was there. She looked terrified. Because I wasn't weak. I wasn't confused. I wasn't dying. I was standing straight, walking without assistance, and wearing a suit. I hadn't been able to button 2 months ago. The judge adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Arthur Bennett, you are present." "I am, Your Honor." Emily's attorney immediately stood. "Your Honor, we were informed Mr. Bennett was in assisted care and unable to manage his affairs." I spoke calmly. I was placed there under false pretenses. Daniel stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Dad, we were trying to help you." I looked at him, not angrily, not loudly, just disappointed. "No, Daniel, you were trying to replace me." Laura stood and handed the court a folder. "Your Honor, before this guardianship petition proceeds, we request the court review evidence of intentional medical harm and financial exploitation." The room went silent. The judge frowned. Medical harm. Laura placed the pendant on the evidence table. This necklace was used to administer a transdermal toxin to Mr. Bennett over several weeks. We also have recorded audio of the petitioners discussing their plan to declare him incompetent and sell his home. Emily's lawyer objected immediately. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." The judge raised a hand. "Play the recording." The audio filled the courtroom. Daniel's voice, Emily's voice, every word clear, every plan exposed. By the end of it, nobody spoke. Daniel slowly sat down, his hands covering his face. Emily didn't move. The judge looked directly at her. "Mrs. Bennett, Do you have any explanation? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, because there wasn't one. The judge turned toward the clerk. Guardianship petition is denied immediately. The court is referring this matter to criminal investigation for elder abuse, fraud, and attempted unlawful property seizure. A gasp echoed behind us. I didn't feel victory. I felt something heavier. Loss. Because the person I had worked my whole life to protect had been sitting across the room trying to erase me. As officers approached Emily, she finally spoke. Arthur, please. You don't understand. I looked at her one last time. No, I said quietly. I finally do. In part 7, after the arrest, Daniel comes to see me alone. And what he confesses is something I never expected to hear. Part 7. 2 days after the hearing, I finally returned home. The front door felt heavier than I remembered. For a moment I just stood there, holding the handle, afraid of what I might feel walking inside. This house held every memory of Margaret, birthdays, holidays, the day Daniel took his first steps, and also the place where my own son had planned to remove me from my life. I opened the door. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. I walked slowly through the living room, touching the back of Margaret's chair, the staircase railing, the old clock on the wall. I hadn't realized how close I came to never seeing any of it again. Then I heard a knock. I already knew who it was. Daniel stood on the porch. He looked worse than I had ever seen him, unshaven, red eyes, and shoulders slumped like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't step inside. Can I talk to you? He asked quietly. I moved aside and let him in. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where this all began. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, Emily was arrested this morning. I nodded slowly. I know. He swallowed hard. They're charging her with attempted poisoning and fraud. And conspiracy. My name is involved too. His voice broke. I didn't think it would go this far. I looked at him carefully. You knew about the necklace. He stared at the table. I knew it made you weak, he admitted. But she told me it was harmless. Just something that would convince the doctor you couldn't live alone anymore. My chest tightened. So you agreed. Tears formed in his eyes. I was drowning, Dad. Debt, loans, the mortgage. I lost my job 6 months ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you disappointed. Emily kept saying the house was the only solution, that once we sold it, everything would be fixed. I didn't interrupt. He finally looked at me. I never wanted to hurt you. I just kept saying yes to stop the pressure. By the time I realized what she was really doing, I was already part of it. The silence in the kitchen felt heavier than the courtroom. He whispered, I don't expect forgiveness. I looked at him for a long time. I could have died, Daniel. He nodded, crying openly now. I know. He reached into his pocket and placed a set of keys on the table. My copy of the house key. I won't fight anything legally. I'll accept whatever happens. He stood up slowly and walked toward the door. Before he opened it, he said something that sounded more like a child than a grown man. I didn't lose my father in court. I lost him the day I chose money over you. He left. I didn't stop him, because forgiveness wasn't something I could give yet. I sat alone at the table for a long time, staring at the pendant now sealed inside an evidence bag Laura had returned to me. It was small, but it had nearly destroyed everything. And now I had one final decision to make. Not about Emily, about my son. In Part 8, I make a choice that changes Daniel's life forever, but it isn't the one he expects. Part 8. 3 weeks passed. The house became quiet again, the way it used to be after Margaret died. No arguments. No pretending to be weak. No watching what I ate or drank. Just silence. And thinking. Every morning I made tea and sat by the window where Margaret used to read. I kept replaying Daniel's face the day he left. Not the man who sat in court, but the little boy who once ran into this kitchen after school shouting, "Dad, look what I made." I could still hear it. And that was the problem. Emily had planned everything. But Daniel had chosen to stay. That part one couldn't ignore. A week later, Laura called. "Arthur, the prosecutor wants to know if you plan to testify against Daniel. With your statement, he could face prison too." I closed my eyes. Emily. She will definitely be charged. The evidence is overwhelming. I knew that already, but my decision wasn't about the court anymore. "Arrange a meeting," I told her. "I want to see him." We met at a small legal visitation room. Daniel looked thinner than before, tired, ashamed. He couldn't even look at me. When he sat down, "I understand if you came to tell me it's over," he said quietly. I placed a folder on the table and slid it toward him. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside were legal documents. His eyes widened as he read. What is this?" "A conditional trust," I said calmly. "The house, my savings, everything, placed under protection. When I pass away, you will still inherit it." He stared at me in disbelief. "After what I did?" "Yes," I answered, "but not freely." I pointed to the last page. He read aloud slowly. "Mandatory counseling, financial supervision, community service, and permanent removal of Emily from legal access to any family assets." His hands trembled. You're giving me another chance." I looked at him carefully. "No, I'm giving you responsibility. A second chance is something you earn." Tears rolled down his face. "Why?" I took a deep breath. "Because I almost lost my life, but I refused to lose my son too. However, understand this clearly. Trust is not rebuilt by words, only by years of actions." He broke down completely. "I'm sorry, Dad. I was weak." I stood up slowly. "Weakness made you follow her. What you do next will define you." I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "One more thing," I said without turning around. "I removed you from my will once." He froze. "I added you back today." Months later, the court sentenced Emily for elder abuse and fraud. Daniel cooperated fully with the investigation and accepted his legal penalties, probation and financial restitution. He started working again, not in an office, with me. Every Saturday morning he came over and helped repair the old fence Margaret and I built years ago. At first we barely spoke, but slowly, conversation returned. Not perfect, not easy, but real. One afternoon he handed me a cup of tea and said quietly, I don't want the house anymore. I just want to be allowed to come here. I looked around the living room, Margaret's chair, the photographs, the life I nearly lost. You were never banned, I said. You just forgot what this place meant. For the first time in a long while, my family began again. And the necklace? I kept it locked away, not as evidence, as a reminder, because betrayal almost ended my life. But truth saved what mattered more. Part 9, Epilogue. A year later, the house felt alive again. Daniel still came every weekend. Sometimes we fixed things. Sometimes we just sat on the porch and watched the sun set the way. Margaret and I used to. We didn't talk much about the past. We didn't need to. His actions spoke loud now. Trust wasn't restored overnight, but it was rebuilding, one day at a time. On my birthday, he handed me a small box. For a moment, my hands froze. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a wooden key holder he had carved himself. On the top he had burned 3 words. Dad's home always. I looked at him. You kept the house, he said quietly. But I finally understood. It was never about the property. It was about you. I nodded slowly, because in the end, the greatest inheritance I could leave him wasn't money or walls. It was the lesson he learned too late. That family is something you protect, not something you claim. And this time, he finally did. Part 10, Final Closing. Years passed quietly. My health returned completely once the poison was gone. The doctors even said something surprising. The damage had never been permanent. I hadn't been dying. I had been made to look like I was. Sometimes that thought still chills me. But life moved forward. Daniel kept his promise. He paid every legal restitution, attended every counseling session, and slowly rebuilt himself. Not the man who wanted an inheritance, but the son who wanted a father. One autumn afternoon, we stood together repairing the front porch. The same porch where I once taught him how to ride a bicycle. He suddenly stopped working and looked at me. Dad, thank you for not giving up on me. I leaned on the railing. I almost did, I said honestly. But forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing what future you want to live with. He nodded. I'm still earning it. Yes, I said. And you will for the rest of your life. That's what responsibility is. Before sunset, he placed a new nameplate near the front door. Not his name. Not mine. It simply read, Family lives here. I realized something then. Emily's plan was never really about the necklace. It was about greed. The belief that a person's value can be measured by what they own. But what nearly destroyed us ended up teaching us. I kept my home. I kept my life. And in a difficult, painful way, I kept my son. Because sometimes justice isn't only punishment. Sometimes it's the chance to become better after you fail. Story complete.